I never imagined the person who would shatter my heart would be the very woman who raised me. She's stronger, Lucas. Better for your future, my mother said, her voice calm, like she was talking about the weather, not tearing my world apart. I was standing just outside the dining room of my cousin's wedding reception in a charming old estate in Charleston, South Carolina. My boyfriend of 3 years, Lucas, had gone to get us champagne. When he didn't return, I went looking for him. I wish I hadn't. Through a narrow crack in the door, I saw them, my mother and Lucas, deep in conversation. I watched her rest her hand on his arm, like he was already family. She praised my sister Charlotte as the one with real potential, the rising star-in-law. And Ava, she continued with a shrug, still chasing her little art dreams. She's sweet, but sweetness doesn't build a future. Lucas didn't protest. He didn't defend me. He just stood there, listening, nodding. I quietly backed away, my chest hollow and burning. That night, something in me broke, but it also sparked a fire I didn't yet understand. Everything I knew about love, family, and loyalty was about to change forever. The weeks that followed felt like a slow unraveling. Lucas began mentioning Charlotte in casual conversations, how brilliant her closing argument was, how she'd taken up boxing to relieve stress. I smiled, nodded, pretended it didn't sting, but each word cut deeper than the last. Then came the sudden cancellations. Work ran late, court deadlines. I'm exhausted. I knew something was shifting, but I clung to hope like a fool clings to a broken raft. One night, I found a text thread hidden under a fake contact name between Lucas and Charlotte. Lunches, jokes, inside references I wasn't part of. When I confronted him, he barely flinched. "Charlotte's your sister, Ava," he said, tone laced with condescension. "Wouldn't it be weird if we didn't get along?" Get along? They were planning weekends, secret dinners. He spoke of her like she was the sun, brilliant, warm, unavoidable. I had become the shadow. At our next family dinner, I noticed them exchanging glances. Charlotte laughed too easily at Lucas's jokes. He brushed a crumb off her cheek like it was natural. My heart screamed, but I said nothing. "You're imagining things," my mother snapped when I tried to confide in her. "You've always been too sensitive." But my best friend Grace wasn't so quick to dismiss it. After Lucas left early again, citing client prep, she leaned in. "He's pulling away, Ava, and not because of work." I nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. I knew, I just didn't want to face it. 3 months after that fateful kitchen conversation, I showed up at Lucas's apartment, unannounced. I had 2 tickets to see the Luminaries, his favorite band. We'd always talked about going. His door was unlocked. That should have been my first sign. As I stepped inside, I noticed the trail. A jacket, heels, Charlotte's handbag, her scarf, the one I bought her last Christmas, was on his couch. I heard laughter, then soft voices, then silence. I approached the bedroom door, trembling. It wasn't fully shut. There they were, tangled together, Charlotte's head on Lucas's chest, both half asleep and completely unbothered by the world. Until I dropped the tickets. They fluttered to the floor, tiny pieces of my broken dream. Charlotte looked up first, annoyed, not ashamed. Lucas scrambled, stammering, "Ava, it's not." "Don't." I cut him off. "Don't insult me with lies." Charlotte sat up, not bothering to cover herself. "It was going to come out eventually," she said coolly. "Honestly, this is better. You can move on." Move on? From a life I built around him. From a family that had just thrown me away. I walked out that night with nothing but my pride. And it was the beginning of everything. The betrayal that shattered me would soon become the fuel that remade me. The night after I caught them, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break things the way I always thought I would. If someone betrayed me like that, I packed. Everything I could fit in my car, I took. Everything else, paintings, secondhand furniture, photos, I left behind like ashes from a life that had already burned down. Grace opened her apartment door at 2 a.m., still half asleep. "You can have the couch," was all she said, then pulled me into a hug so tight it cracked something open inside me. But I didn't stay long. By the end of the week, I was behind the wheel, driving away from Charleston and everything that reminded me of them. My family, Lucas, Charlotte, and especially my mother. The woman who once cradled me during nightmares had become the architect of my deepest one. I didn't have a destination until I saw a flyer for an art show in Chicago, taped to a gas station window. I took it as a sign. With nothing but my art portfolio, a few $100s, and a stubborn belief that I could start over, I arrived in Chicago during a torrential rainstorm. The wipers of my ancient Honda Civic could barely keep up. It felt symbolic, like the sky was trying to wash away what I'd been. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of the city. The carpet smelled like cigarettes and regret. I gave myself exactly 5 minutes to cry. When my timer buzzed, I opened my laptop and started searching for jobs and apartments. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. 3 days later, after a dozen rejections and 5 soul-crushing interviews, I walked into a corporate building with my resume printed on cheap paper and hope clinging to every thread of my outfit. I applied for an administrative job at Meridian Investment Group. Instead, I was offered something else. Carol from HR smiled tightly. "That role's been filled, but our junior associate needs help. He scares assistants away." Desperation outweighed fear, so I followed her into the maze of glass offices and paperwork chaos. There he was, Patrick Reynolds. He looked up from a cluttered desk, dark stubble, rolled sleeves, tired eyes that still had spark. "Sorry for the mess. Deadlines," he muttered. I shook his hand. "Ava Morgan, I can handle chaos." He smiled, really smiled. "Then maybe you're exactly what I need." I didn't know it then, but this offhand meeting in a dim, overworked office would change everything. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't even like. It was survival. 2 people who had been burned in different ways, somehow recognizing the fire still flickering inside the other. This wasn't the life I planned, but it was about to become the one that saved me. Working for Patrick felt like stepping into a storm. He was fast, focused, and intense. I was terrified, but too desperate to quit. The first month was full of silent tears in the bathroom, long nights at the office, and hours spent Googling financial terms. But slowly something shifted. I started to understand. I organized his chaos, anticipated his needs, and he noticed. "I didn't think you'd last," Patrick said one evening. It was the first time in months I'd felt truly seen. We started having lunch together, and the walls between us began to lower. Our conversations moved from reports to childhood dreams and painful truths. He shared how his father had cut him off. I told him about the gallery I once dreamed of opening in Charleston. Somehow, we just got each other. "We were both underestimated too soon," he once said, tapping his coffee cup to mine in a quiet kind of toast. One night, as we worked late, he asked, "Why are you still here?" I answered simply, "Because the work isn't finished." That night, I saw someone new in the mirror. Not the girl who'd been betrayed and left behind, but a woman rebuilding her life with strength and quiet fire. And I finally understood. My worth was never theirs to define. 6 months into my new life in Chicago, the unthinkable happened. Patrick asked me to dinner, not takeout at our desks, but an actual reservation at a real restaurant. I assumed we were celebrating a successful quarter or a difficult client win. Instead, over creme brulee and soft jazz, he slid a business proposal across the table. "I've been working on this for years," he said quietly. "A boutique investment firm focused on sustainability and first-generation entrepreneurs. People like us. I'm leaving Meridian next month to launch it, and I want you to come with me." I stared at the document, heart racing. "As what? Your assistant?" "No," he said, eyes locked on mine. "As my operations manager. You understand people, systems, and purpose. I can't do this without you." It felt like my world paused. "I don't even fully understand finance," I whispered. "You understand more than you think," he said gently. "What you bring is bigger than numbers. You bring clarity. you bring heart. The offer was risky. We had no funding, no office, and no guarantee of success. But deep down, I knew this was the moment I stopped surviving and started living. When do we start? I asked. We launched from the living room of my tiny apartment. The dining table became our conference room. Coffee mugs doubled as filing bins. Some nights, we stayed up till 3 a.m. drafting presentations. Other nights, we collapsed in silence, wondering if we'd made a terrible mistake. But something kept us going. Faith, grit, the way we filled in each other's gaps, his vision, my structure, his fire, my calm. Our first few months were brutal. I took a part-time job at an art gallery just to keep us afloat. Patrick pitched to anyone who'd listen, but slowly doors began to open. Our breakthrough came with a small clean energy startup that believed in our mission. One client turned into 3. Word spread. We gained traction, little by little, win by win. Then one night, while reviewing spreadsheets on my floor in sweatpants, Patrick looked up and said, "Marry me." No ring, no speech, just conviction. I want you as my partner in this business, in life, in everything. People said it was too fast, too risky, but we'd already built something real, something neither of us had ever known before, a true partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. 3 months later, we were married in a simple courthouse ceremony. No big crowd, just Grace and Patrick's brother as witnesses. I wore a cream dress. He wore a charcoal suit. "I choose you," Patrick whispered, holding my hands. "Before work, before success, always you." In that moment, I realized this wasn't the future I planned. It was better. Building a business with Patrick was nothing like I expected. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't smooth. It was late nights, tight budgets, endless doubt, and still, somehow, joy. We ran our company, Reynolds Morgan Partners, from a 1-bedroom apartment. The dining table was our boardroom. The couch doubled as a workspace. Some days, we pitched to clients in cafes, pretending we had a real office. Other days, we cried over bills and celebrated tiny wins with takeout. I took a part-time job at a local gallery to keep us afloat. Patrick chased leads with relentless determination. And through it all, we held on to one thing, the mission, helping people like us, underdogs, first-timers, dreamers, with no connections but big ideas. 6 months in, our emergency fund was nearly gone. We argued, we stressed, but we didn't give up. And then, finally, a breakthrough. A small eco-tech firm chose us over the big guys. Then 3 more followed. From there, it snowballed. We signed our first lease for a real office downtown, hired interns, delegated, moved into a slightly bigger apartment with a second bedroom that wasn't filled with printer paper and folders. 3 years later, we weren't just surviving, we were thriving. Patrick became known for his ethical investment strategies. I built the systems that kept us running smoothly, from onboarding to operations. Clients trusted us not just with their money, but with their values. We were equals, partners, and still in love. Our Sunday mornings became sacred, reading the paper over coffee, walking through farmers markets, dreaming about opening a second office in Austin. I still painted, late at night when the world was quiet. My studio was tiny, but it was mine. A reminder of who I was before and how far I'd come. Then came the biggest surprise. A corporate giant offered to acquire our firm. Their condition: Patrick would remain as CEO of the newly formed Sustainable Investment Division, with full authority. They wanted us, not just our numbers. The night we signed the deal, I stood beside Patrick in our kitchen, now in a home with hardwood floors and a backyard we never thought we'd have. "We did it," he whispered. "No," I corrected softly. "We built it." That was the difference. We hadn't waited to be rescued. We hadn't begged for a seat at someone else's table. We'd carved out our own and made space for others too. Success didn't erase the pain from my past. but it made me proud of how I rose from it. I was no longer the girl people overlooked or dismissed. I was Ava Morgan, co-founder, builder, believer, and I had finally become the woman I was always meant to be. 5 years into our company's success, I rarely thought of Charleston. The betrayal, the pain, even their names, they'd all faded into background noise until one Tuesday morning, Patrick slid a financial journal across the breakfast table. On the cover, a small headline read, "Davis and Associates faces bankruptcy after failed expansion." I stared at it for a long time. My sister's firm, the one she built with Lucas, they were outsourcing legal work to a company we're about to acquire, Patrick said gently. I thought you should hear it from me first. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt distant, foreign, like I was reading about strangers. They'll be at the gala, Patrick added carefully. It's standard protocol. You don't have to speak to them. But I wanted to. Not out of spite, not to gloat, to be seen. For who I'd become, not the girl they once discarded, but the woman who had turned ashes into an empire. The gala was everything we'd dreamed of, held at the Natural History Museum, filled with warm lights and purpose. Patrick looked sharp in his tux. I wore an emerald green gown and confidence like armor. They arrived late. My mother, poised as ever, in navy silk. Charlotte beside her, older, tighter around the eyes. And Lucas, quiet, smaller than I remembered. They didn't recognize me at first. But when they did, their faces changed. Not in anger or regret, in disbelief. I greeted them calmly. I introduced Patrick as my husband, my business partner, the CEO. And when he spoke at the podium later that night, he said my name, not just in passing, but with reverence. None of this exists without Ava Morgan. Her brilliance is the backbone of what we've built. Their expressions told me everything. They had underestimated me, and now they couldn't look away. After dinner, my mother approached me. "You've done well," she said, glass of champagne in hand. "I have," I replied evenly. "I always knew you would," she added, rewriting history with a practiced smile. "No," I corrected softly. "You didn't, but that's okay, I did." She tried to pivot, to ask for favors, to hint that Charlotte and Lucas could use opportunities now, but I just smiled. Their future will depend on their own merit, like mine did. I walked away, not out of cruelty, but closure. That night, Patrick and I sat on the floor of our bedroom, shoes off, champagne in plastic cups, leftovers between us. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Lighter," I whispered, like I finally put down a burden I didn't know I was still carrying. He nodded. "You didn't need to prove anything tonight." "I know," I said, smiling. "But I proved it anyway, not to them, to myself." Sometimes, the pain that breaks you is the same pain that builds you. Ava didn't find strength in success alone. She found it in the decision to stand back up when no one believed in her. Her greatest revenge wasn't success, it was peace. She didn't need to destroy those who hurt her, because they were already trapped in the small world they chose for themselves. Ava created something bigger, a life built on her own values, surrounded by people who saw her clearly and treated her as an equal. The most powerful transformation is the one where you no longer crave validation from the people who once dismissed you. You don't have to fight to prove your worth, just live it boldly. If you've ever felt like the lesser one in your family or relationship, remember this: their opinions are not your truth. Your path may be slower, messier, or less conventional, but that doesn't make it any less valid. Start where you are. Use what you have. Build anyway. Whether it's in your career, your passions, or your healing, move forward, even if no one claps for you at first. And one day, without warning, you'll look back and realize you didn't just survive. You created a life worth living. If you enjoy deep, emotional, and meaningful stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new update. Your support is the motivation that drives us to keep bringing you powerful stories. Once again, thank you for being here, and see you in the next story.